welcome to Conscious Conversations for March 24th. Today is the 24th, 2021. We've been rotating hosting Conscious Conversations, and I think it's been very interesting having Shara and Craig and Blair be the hosts of it, so that, you know, we get some variety of guests. They know so many people, they have so many connections. And tonight, my guest is going to be once again Kirk, who really is a unity scholar. He has spent so much time studying the unity teachings, unity books, so many things that so many of us possibly have spent some time with, but not gone into the depth that Kirk has. So I really enjoy hearing him. I just admire all that he does. And tonight he's going to be speaking about the 12 powers, an expanded view of the 12 powers, which as a unity person, we all know about the 12 powers, but Kirk is going to give us a little bit more of a insight about it. And so we'll start with our poem before we have a prayer. And tonight's poem, fittingly, is about the stars by Walt Whitman. It's called A Clear Midnight. This is thy hour, O soul, thy free flight into the wordless, away from books, away from art, the day erased, the lesson done. Thee fully forth emerging, silent, gazing, pondering the themes thou lovest best, night, sleep, death, and the stars. Walt Whitman was quite the mystic, and so much of his poetry reflects that understanding of the wider world, the wider existence. So let's take a moment to say a prayer before we go into our conscious conversation. Thank you, Holy Spirit, as we spend this time together this evening learning about the 12 powers, the powers that each of us simply own by taking birth. We're each heir to these 12 powers. Learning about these powers is evolutionary, making each of us pioneers in this age of Aquarius. Pioneers who are exploring beyond any to be found in the material world. We are so grateful for this and so much more. Amen. So let's have our conscious conversation with Kirk Reeve. So my guest tonight, most of you know Kirk Reeve from Conscious Conversations, from the community, and he said something to me that really piqued my interest about expanding on the 12 powers. Now, we've all heard about the 12 powers. Reverend Clive made a point of talking about the 12 powers each month. We have that chart that had the colors and what disciple was assigned to the month. But the reason that when he said expanding on the 12 powers, I thought, you know, I have a lot of questions about the 12 powers. And so I'm not going to ask my questions, but Kirk is going to give his expanded version of the 12 powers, or expanded knowledge of the 12 powers. And he told me earlier that I can then ask whatever questions I want if I feel like I still didn't get it. So, and I know, you know, this is what I know, and you can sort of confirm this. Charles Fillmore wrote a book about the 12 powers, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And prior to that, like, did this come from the Bible? His teachings about the 12 powers?
It's there.
It's there. Is he the one that kind of identified them?
Well, he certainly helped.
Okay. So he's not, it wouldn't be right to say he's the inventor of the 12 powers.
That would not be right.
That would not be right. Okay. Okay. But he obviously has expanded, organized it and expanded on it and gone into some depth with it. So for unity purposes, that is a foundational teaching of unity, the 12 powers. Most people that have been in unity any length of time learn about the 12 powers. And they may be like me, where they know like a little bit about the 12 powers. So I guess, just tell us what we need to know that we don't know, because I think we don't know a lot.
Well, it's my pleasure to talk about it. And I might say initially that I became acquainted with the 12 powers of man when I read Charles Fillmore's book that you just cited, The 12 Powers of Man. And this was quite a few years ago that I read it. And I found it interesting. And I think my assumption was what you just alluded to, that this was probably a concept that originated with Fillmore and that he's sharing with us as part of his teachings, his philosophy. And that was about it. I think I shelved it after that until Clive de la Porte began to include reference to the 12 powers in just about every Sunday message that he delivered. And that sparked my interest again. And so I did some research on the subject and realized that there indeed had been so much that I did not know, that I was learning, and I felt compelled to share it with, particularly with our unity community in Tustin. And so this seemed like a real good opportunity. So I'm grabbing it.
Good, and we're listening.
Yeah. We know that in unity, we use the phrase states of consciousness quite often. And states of consciousness, well, let's say a high state of consciousness, has to do with quality thoughts that are in the same frequency range as divine thinking, the thinking of the creative forces of the universe, God thinking. And low states of consciousness would be thinking that is predominantly error thinking, false thinking. And you have a lot in between. It's been said that the Bible is a study of consciousness. It's a study of mind. In fact, another name for the 12 powers of man is the 12 faculties of mind in man. Now, right away, when I read that in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, it occurred to me that that in itself enlarges the concept. The 12 faculties of mind with a capital M. That refers to God, our creator. And it's telling me loudly and clearly that these 12 faculties are divine faculties of our creator. And that we, as expressions of our creator, have those same characteristics, those same attributes. That's
So
what we are.
my question that I asked earlier about, do we come into the world with these faculties? I think what you're saying is yes, and are they kind of dormant, or?
I'm saying yes, but for us, they need developing.
Okay.
They need to be fully developed from a state of not knowing to a state of full enlightenment. And that's what the Bible is all about.
Is helping you to develop these faculties.
The Bible is the story of that development within mankind.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Okay.
It's been said, as I just stated, that the Bible is a study in consciousness. Its parables, allegories, stories, and so forth are symbol-rich writings of experiences, situations, growth challenges that represent what we face in life, that souls, all of us, encounter in our incarnations. As we go from a slow awakening to our knowledge of who we are, to full enlightenment as to who we are. And we find evidence in the Bible from the very beginning of the Bible, the book of Genesis, of this story of mankind's development of consciousness. Right off the bat, the Bible tells us, in effect, that thought is the creative power of the universe. That's the concept that the Bible emphasizes throughout, from Genesis to Revelations. Thought is the creative power of the universe. And it jumps right into that at the beginning of Genesis when it presents to us in allegory form the 7 stages through which thought passes in the creative process, beginning with an idea, the dawning of an idea, through the stages of development and refinement of the idea. That would be stages 2 through 5. The manifestation of the idea in stage 6. Stage 7 would be a period of reflection, satisfaction, and reverence about what we've created. Now, that creative process applies to each of us. It's the creative process through which the creative forces of the universe go through. We are, in effect, replicas of that power to do, that power to express.
So you're talking about in Genesis that God created the water, the sea, whatever, That's
Well, yeah.
part of this developmental
Well,
idea in God's mind to God resting on the seventh day, right?
I'm referring to Genesis 1 and 2, which we
Okay,
regard as the story of creation.
right.
But the deeper meaning of that is what I just stated, the 7 stages through which thought passes in the creative process. And it requires a lot of study and interpretation of those words in the Bible to realize that that's what it means. And then the Bible is immediately following that in the Bible um, is a lengthy parable uh, about how man brings about the conditions of his life through the nature of his thoughts. And the characters that help us along in that parable are Adam and Eve. And the serpent plays the role of a low state of consciousness. And then we move a little bit further in Genesis, and we encounter a situation in which we, the characters represent us, so I say we, find ourselves in a situation where we're surrounded by error thinking, false thinking, and we have some options as to what to do about it. We can join in.
Which we do a lot, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Or we can run away. We can think, well, hey, this is inevitable. I'm not going to worry about it. Or we can raise our state of consciousness and create an arc.
Oh, okay.
We can create an arc of a sanctuary, if you will. The ark is a sanctuary for true thoughts. And we can ride out the storm of error thinking in that mental sanctuary.
Interesting.
Okay, it is interesting.
Yes.
But you see, what those allegories and parables do is emphasize the fact that the Bible is principally about states of consciousness, thought. This is a mental universe in which we live. Charles Fillmore acknowledges that, certainly. He calls it a mental universe, a spiritual universe. He's been known to hyphenate the two words, a spiritual mental universe.
Oh, okay.
And when it comes to the 12 powers, or I prefer the second name I stated, the 12 faculties of mind, they are introduced a little bit further when we meet the 12 sons of Jacob. That's about the middle of the book of Genesis. But preceding that, there are some people that we get acquainted with first that are important lead-ins to this concept of the 12 faculties. The first one is Abraham. And we're talking about metaphysical meaning now when I mention these people. And my source of information, as it is with so much of what I'm sharing, is the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. Okay, so Abraham represents faith in the reality and power of invisible realms. Faith in the reality and power of invisible realms. That's the first step that man takes uh, in his spiritual awakening. He realizes that there's more out there than meets the eye.
Mm. So beyond the, I'm just thinking of Noah building the ark. It's not about the ark, Noah building a literal ark. And it may, are you saying that that didn't actually happen, or it's not really relevant to, certainly not today, but
I'm saying that the ark metaphysically refers to a state of
the
consciousness.
state of because it all is a state of consciousness
Yeah.
in the Bible. Okay.
Now, the question that you are inferring is, was there a flood? My answer is yes, but
Yeah.
that
But,
requires
okay.
that requires another session
Yeah.
to get
Well,
into.
but the idea you're explaining it well. The idea of a flood of negative or
Yeah, this is the
error
flood.
thinking.
This is the flood that Genesis is referring to. It's the flood of error thinking.
Okay.
Right. Um, but after Abraham comes his son Isaac.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
Right.
Isaac has metaphysical meaning also. And that is a conscious recognition of one's relationship with God. Isaac demonstrated that conscious recognition, a further step toward awakening. And then Isaac, among his children, were twin sons, Esau and Jacob. And a lot was written about those two they were twins. Esau represented man's animalistic nature. Jacob represented metaphysically man's spiritual nature. And there was quite a tussle between the two in those chapters of Genesis. But eventually, the spiritual nature won out. And Jacob represents the vague idea of the I am identity. And it is through Jacob that the 12 faculties of mind come onto the scene. His 12 sons. And I think it's Genesis 29 through 35 speaks of the birth of these 12 sons and the mothers of them. There were four different mothers of the 12 sons. But the metaphysical meaning here is that the 12 sons of Jacob represent the early stages, and I emphasize early stages, of man's slow awakening to the truth of his being. Somewhere in that story, in fact, I think it's in Genesis 35, according to my notes, God changes Jacob's name to Israel. Now, there's a metaphysical meaning for Israel as well. Israel represents us, all of mankind, individually and collectively. And God's message to Jacob during this renaming was, be fruitful and multiply. A nation and company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall spring from you. Nations are collections of thoughts that are to be instructed through the 12 faculties of mind. And Israel, as I say, represents each of us in our journey from slow awakening to eventual enlightenment. So throughout the Bible, we are Israel, moving forward in our development of our state of consciousness. And that state of consciousness is represented by the 12 faculties of mind. Those 12 faculties are what we are lifting up through our various experiences, our trials and errors, the lessons we learn, and so on. In Genesis 35, the 12 sons are young men now. The oldest son, Reuben, is probably in his early 30s. The youngest, Benjamin, is probably 14, 15. But the key player from Genesis 35 on is Joseph. Perhaps you heard of the Broadway musical, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Okay, that's the story of Joseph from this point, from Genesis, about Genesis 35 or so. Joseph is 17 years of age at this time. He represents the faculty of imagination. And he has a rich imagination. He's characterized by the Bible as being a dreamer. And he shows ability of being able to interpret dreams, his own and those of other people. He's a smart kid, but he makes some mistakes when it comes to getting along with his older brothers. They don't like him very well. And Joseph has a dream in which he is exercising authority over his brothers, most of whom are older than he is. He makes the mistake of telling his brothers about the dream. And of course, they immediately think, well, this brother of ours is thinking ahead to when father passes away. He thinks he's going to be the boss of all of us.
Right.
And so that doesn't make things better in their relationship. He has the same dream a second time, and he again reminds his brothers of that dream. And then Father Jacob gives Joseph a gift of a beautiful robe with sleeves, a coat that everybody admires. And of course, it exemplifies the fact that Joseph is Jacob's favorite son. And that really angers the older brothers to the point where they're plotting to kill him. Now, I remind you that these 12 sons represent the very early stages of the development of these faculties. And here they're planning on killing their young brother.
But are they trying to kill imagination? Would that be a way to look at it?
No, I don't think
No.
that.
Okay.
I don't think
Right.
no, that's not it.
Okay.
That's
Right.
not it. But what it's leading up to is the next stage of development for the 12 faculties of mind. And that second stage we won't encounter until the first chapter in Exodus.
Okay.
When we read about the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, I remind you that Jacob has been renamed Israel by God. And the rest of the story about Joseph is a very lengthy one, and I don't have the time. Wish I did, but it's a long story. I don't have the time now to tell the whole thing, but I will say a few words about it, try and be very brief. The 11 sons are out in the pasture tending sheep. Apparently, Jacob is a pretty wealthy guy. He's got lots of land, lots of animals. He sends Joseph out to the pasture to check on things, to make sure everything's going well. Why Joseph's not out there working, I don't know. Favorite son, I guess that's the reason. Anyway, the brothers see him coming. They see him coming from some distance away. And that's when they start murmuring among themselves about doing him in. Now, there is a deep pit near where the brothers are tending their sheep. It's a hole in the ground with steep sides, and anybody who has dropped in there is going to be there forever unless somebody helps them out. So what they're thinking of is dropping Joseph down in that pit. Probably initially it was to just tease him, but then it got serious. Let's leave him there. So that's what they do. Joseph comes out, they take his coat from him, they take him over, they drag him over to this pit, they drop him in, and then go on back to their encampment and have lunch. They see off in the distance a caravan coming, camels, loaded with merchandise. It's a caravan of traders heading south to Egypt along this trade route. And one of the brothers has the bright idea, hey, instead of letting Joseph die, let's take him out of the pit, sell him to these traders. They'll take him down to Egypt and sell him for a higher price, a profit, to some rich Egyptian who will make a slave or servant out of him. We'll make some money out of it, and we'll get rid of this brat at the same time.
So this really was low consciousness, right?
Yes, it is. Like I emphasize, it's the early stages of our development of these 12 faculties of mind. That's what it represents. Anyway, Reuben, the oldest brother, goes out to the pit to get Joseph out of the pit. He finds the pit empty. And what has happened is that another caravan has come up from the south, and the traders hear Joseph cry out. They pull him out of the pit. They see the oncoming caravan from the north and have the same idea as the brothers did. Let's sell this guy to these traders heading for Egypt and then be on our merry way, which they do. So when Reuben gets out to the pit and finds it empty, he goes back to his brothers. They're all upset. They kill a goat. They soak Joseph's coat in goat blood and take it back to Jacob with a tall story about what happened. And Joseph is on his way to Egypt. Okay, I'm going to make a longer story short now. Joseph gets sold to the captain of the guards of the Pharaoh, a wealthy man. He starts off with menial responsibilities, but because of his smarts, he gets rapid promotions. By the time he's in his mid-20s, the captain of the guard has made him in charge of his entire estate, his household, his lands, his animals. He's doing well. I'm going to skip the part where the captain of the guard's wife makes a play for him. And then again, and he rejects her twice. And she makes up a story about him reports that story to her husband. The husband has Joseph thrown into the king's prison. Later, the king of Egypt has dreams that he doesn't understand, and they worry him. And none of his advisors can explain what the dreams mean. He hears about Joseph, interpreter of dreams. He sends for Joseph. He tells Joseph the dreams he had. And Joseph says, well, the dreams mean that Egypt is to experience 7 years of prosperity, followed by 7 years of severe famine. And preparations need to be made. So the king appoints Joseph in the responsibility of preparing for the famine, which he does. He does a good job. And when the famine hits, Joseph is appointed as the man to see for the distribution of the grains and other foodstuff that have been saved. In the meantime, the famine has hit other parts of the Middle East too, including the land of Canaan, where Jacob and the remaining 11 sons live. They hear about Egypt and its ability to survive the famine because they've saved up. Jacob sends 10 of his sons down to Egypt with pack animals with instructions to purchase grain and other foodstuff, bring it back. So they do that. The contact person is Joseph, whom they do not recognize, but he recognizes them. And again, to make a long story shorter, Joseph provides his brothers with the foodstuff, identifies himself, sends them back to Canaan with the invitation to Jacob to bring his family to Egypt, and that he, Joseph, will see to their well-being. And that's what happens. So Jacob, his 12 sons now are all relocated in Egypt. The wives, the children, and eventual grandchildren. And these people, lots of them, form the nucleus of the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay? And that's who we encounter in the first chapter of Exodus, the 12 tribes of Israel. And at that point in time, the king with the dreams has died. A new king has taken his place who doesn't know Joseph from a hole in the wall, and also is disturbed by the fact that the population of Jews in Egypt is growing and growing. And there is fear over potential political ramifications and influence with so many Jewish people in Egypt. So this new king makes a law that says that all male Jewish babies will be killed. And maybe you've heard, I'm sure you and everybody else has heard the story of the young Jewish gal who was employed by the royalty, has a baby, doesn't want it killed. It's a baby boy, and she builds a little container out of reeds, like a little boat, and puts it in the marsh of the river that flows by the estate of the royalty, pretends that she finds the baby, takes it to her mistress, and the mistress oohs and ahs over it, decides to adopt the baby. Well, that's Moses. Okay. Moses is the grandson of Levi, one of Joseph's brothers. So it's all in the family, as you can see, and it's an expanding family. And Moses turns out to be the one who is going to lead the Jews out of, I should say, lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Remember, we are among the Israelites. So Joseph has a role in helping us leave sense consciousness, which is metaphysically what Egypt stands for, to the promised land, spiritual consciousness, represented by the New Jerusalem. That's our target. It's way down the road for us. But Joseph helps us lead the way, and the 12 tribes of Israel represent let's see what they represent. Thoughts undergoing spiritual discipline through the 12 faculties of mind. I got that from the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. So, the rest of the Old Testament is about that journey through consciousness with experiences that help us grow. And that carries on into the New Testament as well. We're still on that journey. And we not only benefit from the teachings of Jesus, but we also encounter his 12 disciples. The 12 disciples of Jesus, again, represent the 12 faculties of mind at a higher state of consciousness. They represent the further lifting of the 12 faculties of mind in spiritual understanding, consciousness, and expression. So there's our third encounter with the 12 faculties of mind. But there's more. We have the rest of the New Testament to get through. And we know that that after the crucifixion and resurrection, the Apostle Paul organizes several Christian churches in Asia Minor, and he represents truth and will in his ability to organize and support these churches. And then we encounter the book of Revelation, which is full of symbolism to the point where most people ignore it, right? The book of Revelation starts out, well, let me put it this way. The book of Revelation is almost entirely a message from Jesus to his disciple John. Now, this takes place toward the end of the first century, 50 years after the crucifixion and resurrection. So Jesus is communicating with John via an angel. John is in his 80s. He was in charge of one of the 7 churches, but the Romans cracked down on the Christian churches, and John was exiled to the island of Patmos in the northern Mediterranean. So John is in this exiled situation when he receives this lengthy message from Jesus in the form of the vision. The first part of the vision consists of letters to the 7 churches. The 7 churches are us. These are letters to us from Jesus regarding our progress in developing the 12 faculties of mind. And each of the 7 letters is in 4 parts. The first part tells us the virtue of what we've accomplished. The second part of each letter tells us the weakness that we still have to correct. The third part tells us instructions as to what we need to do to correct our weaknesses. And the fourth part tells us the reward. That's what those 7 letters are all about, steeped in metaphysical symbolism. Then we get to the end of Revelation. And I'm looking at Revelations 21 and 22. These are the last 2 chapters of Revelation, the last 2 chapters of the Bible. And in these 2 chapters, Jesus, in this vision, is describing the New Jerusalem, this high state of consciousness toward which we are all moving. And he's describing it in metaphysical terms. And catch this. This is the New Jerusalem. It had a great high wall with 12 gates. And at the gates, 12 angels. And on the gates, the name of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel were inscribed. Well, the 12 gates are symbolic of the 12 faculties of mind. And it's citing the 12 tribes of Israel, which also symbolize the 12 faculties, but at an earlier stage of development. And it goes on to say, on the east gate, on the east, 3 gates, on the north, 3 gates, on the south, 3 gates, on the west, 3 gates. The gates to the city represent the whole consciousness. So when it refers to these 12 gates, the city symbolizes the entire consciousness, that is the 12 faculties of mind in that high spiritual state. And the words of Revelation go on to say, and the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them the 12 names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The Lamb is Jesus. So again, it's referring to the 12 disciples of Jesus, another state of consciousness in this upward development of the faculties. And then it also says that, and the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Now, metaphysically, a pearl is of high value. It represents truth with a capital T. And again, it symbolizes the 12 faculties of mind at a very high state of consciousness. So that's where we leave the Bible, describing our journey. But there's another aspect of this that I want to discuss with you, Mary Jean. And it has to do with ancient wisdom. And specifically, the 12 signs of the zodiac.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And specifically, the 12 constellations of the zodiac, not the 12 signs of the zodiac that make up the 365-day year that those interested in astrology work with. No. These are 12 actual constellations that have been intelligently placed in this part of the galaxy in such a pattern that our solar system can travel in an elliptical journey over a period of 26,000 years, coming close to each of these constellations in turn during that 26,000 year period. Plato called these 26,000 years the great years. They're also referred to as the Platonic years after Plato. Although I point out that the ancient wisdom precedes Plato.
So
he
the
knew about
26,000 years started a long.
Pardon?
Hey, the 26,000 years is way back.
I'm saying that it takes our solar system 26,000 years to orbit this gigantic elliptical path that brushes near each constellation in turn for about 2,000, a little bit more than 2,000 years each.
Okay.
And those periods of 2,000 or 2,100 years are referred to as ages.
So when we talk about the age of Aquarius.
So if we were to take our telescope early in the morning before the sun rises, and we were to look east to where the sun will rise, we would see the constellation Aquarius. We are currently in the age of Aquarius. 2,000 years ago, if we were to do the same thing, look up in the same location in the sky before dawn,
right,
we would see the constellation Pisces.
Right.
Jesus lived and preached during the age of Pisces. If we were to do the same thing 2,000 years before that, when Abraham lived, we would see the constellation Aries. Abraham lived in the age of Aries. Now, I haven't gotten to the important part yet.
Hold that thought just for a second. Okay. So where were we?
I was about to give you the coup de grace.
Oh, okay.
And the main point here about the
ages, yes.
Yeah. I just stated that we are in the age of Aquarius. Jesus lived in the age of Pisces, and Abraham the age of Aries. Okay.
So it goes backwards, or no? in other words, Aries to us is like the first, but then it goes next to Pisces.
It's in the reverse order of what astrologers
That's right.
work with. Okay, so that point needs to be made. It's the reverse order. Right. But there is a great year hypothesis that's been around for a long, long, long time. And this is the hypothesis. Subtle influences from the constellations can impact human consciousness and the ebb and flow of civilizations. Life is impacted on Earth on a grand scale, affecting the way we think, interact with others, and perceive the world around us. So what this is saying is that the 12 constellations of the zodiac are tremendous influences on humanity in the development of our 12 faculties of mind.
And is that saying energetically that though when a planet is in a certain place, or when it affects
these constellations are sending us radiations all the time. All the time.
Yes, all the time, right.
When we pass closer to one, like Aquarius now, we're getting a little heavier dose of radiations. It is said that these 12 constellations represent the curriculum that we follow in the development of our 12 faculties of mind. Mm-hmm. Now, can I explain that further? No, that's beyond me. But I do, my own personal belief is that there is a lot to this. There is so much about these 12 faculties and our development that we do not know, that it just bespeaks of the importance of learning as much as we can about them. And so I think we should be appreciative of Charles Fillmore for making this one of his major teachings, the 12 powers of man, as he called them, because it is relevant to such a high degree to the lives of each of us now and eternally.
Well, so what I'm wanting to say is that we need to have another conversation about each one of the 12 powers. And because it sounds to me like there's a, let's say, because I know this month is wisdom. March is wisdom. And obviously, when you're describing things in the Bible about Joseph's brothers planning to kill him, that would be a very low level of wisdom, correct? And then the higher wisdom, I think it's worth really wanting to explore what some of these things mean, and what Charles Fillmore said about the actual individual 12 powers.
He says a lot about them. In fact, he wrote the book about the 12 powers of man.
Right.
This past Sunday, I noticed that book, The 12 Powers of Man, is featured on the round table in the bookstore. There's about a dozen or more copies there.
Yeah.
And goodness sakes, he fills 300 pages about the 12 powers. But here they are in summary. The first one is faith. And he says that faith is the magnetic power that draws to us desired blessings as we give up ego thoughts of gain or reward. It requires a consciousness of one's indwelling spirit and is built up in consciousness under the law of giving and receiving. Give and it shall be given unto you. That's just a taste. The second faculty is strength, the power of spiritual strength, not physical strength. Spiritual strength developed through trust in spirit and manifested through mental and physical expression. It includes the strength to withstand temptation and the capacity to accomplish. Then the third power, wisdom, the power of sound judgment and clarity in discernment called forth by seeking the guidance of spirit. It includes discrimination, intuition, and knowing. Love is number 4. The pure essence of being that binds together the whole human family. In divine mind, love is the power that joins and binds in divine harmony the universe and everything in it. Power is the 5th faculty. That's the power to master the forces of mind. It's not power over anybody else. It's power over our own thoughts, ideas, feelings, and words. That's where our power is. And then number 6 is imagination, the power to image through thought and give substance to ideas. Understanding is next, the power to realize the laws of thought and the relation of ideas one to another. Number 8 is will, the power to direct the formation of one's spiritual character. Will is the controlling faculty of mind, the executive aspect of our divine nature that carries out the edicts of our Christ mind. Number 9 is order, the power to arrange order in one's thoughts and affairs through understanding of and obedience to spiritual laws. Number 10 is zeal, the power of the affirmative impulse of existence within a person, the urge to move onward in one's spiritual pursuits. Elimination or renunciation, that's number 11. The power to release negative thoughts and actions. Yeah, that's important. But there's a higher level of consciousness too. It's the power to maintain a healthy state of mind through the letting go of old outworn thoughts and allowing new and higher ideals of life and truth to find a place in one's awareness. Finally, life, the 12th power. Life is the energy that propels all forms of action. That really summarizes the curriculum that I believe the 12 signs of the zodiac represent, the 12 powers of man, or the 12 functions of mind in man represent. That's what we are here to develop. each other.
Well, I think we have a lot of work to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to develop these things, and it's so helpful to hear when you talk about, the Bible as this record of consciousness, because
Yes.
they certainly had a lot of work to do, just like we do. So, well, Kirk, this has just been so enlightening, and I know we have a lot more to talk about the 12 powers, and we'll do that again soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Kirk. Always interesting to hear what you have to say. And there are so many different roads we could go down if we had more time. So we'll be visiting with Kirk again. And this is just a reminder as we come to our time of offering love offerings and tithes. Our community is completely supported by your donations, and giving and receiving are part of this unending flow. Giving and receiving go together like breathing in and breathing out. So we just give thanks for this time, for this ability to be in this flow of giving and receiving. And let's say our love offering blessing together, which is an affirmation, an acknowledgement of this flow of giving and receiving. Divine love as me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And of course, as we end every service, we end with the prayer for protection, the most powerful affirmation of the unity movement. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Thank you, and I hope you'll join me next week. I'm going to be talking with Bobby Escarati, who, among other things, is my spiritual director. But we're going to be talking about one of her specialties, which is bio-spiritual focusing. It's a very important technique in spiritual development that involves the awareness of the body. So I think you'll be very interested to hear Bobby, what she has to say. So I'll see you next week on Conscious Conversations.
Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in to the deepest kind of love, to the sweetest kind of life. Get ready, my soul. Everything I've ever done, everything I've ever seen, everything I've lost or won, everything I've ever dreamed has brought me here to the present moment. Here to a new beginning here, and I'm seeing life so clearly now. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in to the deepest kind of love, to the sweetest kind of life. Get ready, get ready, my soul. 'Cause here I go, deeper, deeper, deeper than I've ever been before. Here I go, closer, closer, closer to my sacred source. Here I go, deeper, deeper, deeper than I've ever been before. Here I go, closer, closer, closer to my sacred source. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in into the deepest kind of love, into the sweetest kind of life. Get ready, get ready, my soul. Get ready, my soul.